Good evening, Council, Senior Leadership Team, residents of Pelham. Sorry we're starting 20 minutes late. We had a closed session meeting before this meeting, and it consequently ran over. So we apologize for that. See that we have quorum. I call this session, or this regular meeting of Council into session on Tuesday, February 18th at 5:51. We we have quorum, so ask all those that may, please stand, and we will have the national singing of the national anthem. Okay, a motion put forward by Councillor Wink, seconded by Councillor Stewart. Be resolved that the agenda for the February 18th, 2020 regular meeting of Council be adopted. Any?
I do have one addendum.
Okay. Motion put forward by Councillor Wink, seconded by Councillor Stewart, that the agenda be revised to include item 9.5.3, Inch Hammond Professional Corporation, Town of Pelham proposed odorous industries nuisance bylaw. So we vote on this first, right, on the amendment.
On the amendment first.
Yeah. So on the amendment, which is to include item 9.5.3, any discussion, questions? Seeing none, I'll ask the vote. All those in favor? All those opposed? Keep stealing your pens. Oh, here's one. Thank you. Motion carries. And then back to the original. Be it resolved that the...
Just ask if there are any further amendments to the agenda.
Any further amendments to the agenda as presented? Not seeing any. Approval of agenda. So a motion put forward by Councillor Wink, seconded by Councillor Stewart. Be it resolved that the agenda for the February 18th, 2020 regular meeting of Council be adopted as amended. All those in favor? Any opposed? Motion carries.
Thank you.
Now we have presentations. Oh, disclosure, yeah, you're right, missed one, sorry. At this point, is there any counselor that wants to disclose a pecuniary interest after viewing the agenda? Not seeing any, please ask the clerk to take note. Now, we go to presentations, delegations. The first on the agenda tonight is Tim Nora, Chair of Cannabis Control Committee. Please step forward, sir, and the floor is yours.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor and Council. On your agenda this evening is consideration of the approval of an odorous industries nuisance bylaw that went to the Policy and Priorities Committee a couple weeks ago and has been before you along with a recommendation report from the Cannabis Control Committee. In the intervening time, we have engaged Aird & Burles, our legal counsel, to advise on any improvements that we can make to the bylaw that you have before you. And there have been identified some improvements that we're in the process of delivering to you very shortly. So that's one point I'd just like to comment on, that we are going to make some recommendations for some modest changes to the bylaw. The second point I'd like to bring to your attention is with respect to two letters that have been received by you, one by way a few moments ago of the amendment from Councillor Stewart. The two letters, one from CanTrust lawyers and one from Redecan lawyers, are commenting to you on the recommendation report that went to the Policy and Priorities Committee 2 weeks ago, and on the draft odorous nuisance bylaw that's before you this evening for consideration of approval. I would comment that in light of the changes, first off, that Aaron and Burles, our lawyers, are proposing, and secondly, in light of the comments from the CanTrust and Redecan lawyers, especially with respect to procedural issues, their comments relate to the recommendation report from the committee. And the proper party to respond to those comments are the authors of that report, the Cannabis Control Committee. So I put before you this evening, rather than approving the odorous industries nuisance bylaw that's before you this evening, I would ask council to consider deferring approval until the March 2nd council meeting and putting it on that agenda for approval. And I would ask council also if you would consider directing the Cannabis Control Committee to prepare a response to the letters from CanTrust and from Redecan that will be made available to you and through our CEO, who will comment on and be sure he's satisfied with them. But those letters will properly deal with comments from those two parties in relation to the work product of the Cannabis Control Committee. That's it.
Thank you for that presentation. Any councillors' questions? Councillor Hahn.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I would like to put forward the motion then that council defer the agenda item until the next council meeting on March the 2nd, and also that council CCC then to respond to the cannabis lawyers' letters.
And could I also ask for clarity that we can finish the work with Aird and Burles on those proposed amendments, that Aird and Burles continue to work with the committee on completing those proposed amendments, if I may?
Bylaw until March 2nd, and that the CCC be authorized to prepare responses to the two legal correspondence items.
Yeah, the cannabis lawyers' letters, and also to that motion, also continue to work with everybody else.
I don't have a second for that. Just to be clear, members of council, that would be agenda item, the bylaw listed at agenda item 14 for the bylaw.
Any discussion on this motion? Councillor.
So through you, Mr. Mayor, I have a concern that the Cannabis Control Committee is going to be responding to the lawyers legally. I think that it's great that you're doing that, but it's got to be in conjunction with our lawyers to do that response, not just the CCC. And in addition to that, there was some procedural issues that were brought forward by the lawyers from the two existing cannabis facilities, that we've got to ensure that those procedural items are taken care of. And in addition to that, there was recommendations that the CCC ignored them and didn't require or didn't ask for their input. I know we did offer. Now's an opportunity to go back to them and have a dialogue. And in all honesty, within a 2-week period, I'm not sure if you're going to be able to get all that done.
Is that a question? Or
That's my comment to the motion that's made.
Well, before the CAO speaks, I personally, from what we've heard from legal, I can't support this motion. I honestly think that the CC has done great work. They've got the bylaw here. What we're going to be looking at is procedural, legal steps. And myself, I think that we should be referring this back to our lawyers in Toronto as opposed to the CCC. Thank you.
Yeah, through you, Mr. Mayor. I believe that's what the motion did say.
I added at the end to continue working with Eric.
But you're taking but you're referring it back to the CC and the lawyer. Is that what you're saying?
Well, yes,
Yeah.
that's either
So
way.
you want to go 2 ways. Myself, I think that this is beyond the scope of the CC. I think it should just go to the lawyers. But like I say, that's just my opinion. And if you're saying that it's gonna, your motion reads to go to the CC plus to the lawyers, so be it. I'm just saying we're paying these guys on there. This is strictly on procedural performance. I'm not going to support it. I think it should just go to the lawyers. Any other comments from council before we call the vote? Okay. Okay. On the vote. Oh, I'm sorry. Perhaps the CAO first.
However council decides to proceed, it might behoove you to consider slightly altering the wording. I don't know that March 2nd becomes possible if the CCC has to wait for legal advice and our published deadline. Okay. I don't think a 2-week window. I've never worked with a committee that puts in as many hours. In 17 years, I have yet to see an advisory or a committee of council put in as many hours as the Cannabis Control Committee has. You're talking about a number of workhorses. It's not their fault. That's not the criticism. It's not criticism at all. But I don't think that can necessarily come back inside of 2 weeks for certain, depending on what that interaction is as between external legal counsel and the CCC. That's a conversation over which we only control at least half the conversation at most. So it might not be possible to comply with that and produce the statute, the bylaw that the CCC has been working towards. With that in mind, if you just water that down to March, right now we have dates on the
23rd.
23rd.
well,
Second, the 9th.
well, it's a really 2nd and 23rd though that are like public meetings.
can I comment on that, since you're speaking to the committee's ability? I believe we can deal with that time frame. We're already in discussion with Aird & Burlis. They've seen this bylaw twice. We have 2 letters before us that we have fully reviewed. And I believe we can meet that timeline. If we can't, and we are counting on working with Aird & Burlis, then we would ask you subsequently to defer it to the next meeting, the 23rd, after March the 2nd. But to me, I think the committee is determined to do what it can, and we would ask if it's your wish that you would keep it for the 2nd of March, and if we need more time, we're here tonight asking for more time. If we need more time, you can count on us asking for it again.
Date is for March 2nd. It's already February 18th.
I'm sorry.
When do you publish for March 2nd?
Oh, what day?
Through you, Monday, the 24th.
So the procedural bylaw states that for the March 2nd meeting, we have to publish this coming Monday.
So it isn't really 2 weeks. It's less than one.
What is the next meeting after March the 2nd?
The 24th.
23rd.
Third, big part.
23rd.
Is there an opportunity, just asking, for a special meeting? I'm just asking the question.
We can call a special meeting anytime, but those are just planning act meetings. They're not, you know, sitting as a council. We can call a special meeting anyway if you want to, but you're not sitting as council.
Perhaps you should be sharing that with all of council?
We're looking at the calendar, trying to come up
Yes.
with a date.
Well, you have to ask yourself if there's enough urgency for a special meeting in light of the advice you've received and your timelines. Or the March 2nd is not realistic. If this matter were being referring to staff, I'd be obligated to tell you that I don't think we could comply with this direction to make revisions to a bylaw of this importance and stature in that time frame, let alone write response letters to external counsel. Staff couldn't. I don't think we could manage that in that time frame. So I'm not trying to be difficult. I'm trying to point out the procedural problem. March 24th is still well before the July deadline. If you amend that that motion, I think there's one that can be complied with, and you can get a better quality work product. That is all.
Thank you.
I agree with you, Mr. Cribbs.
Okay. So,
So then I will make then that amendment to the 23rd, I guess it is, March 23rd,
yeah,
right?
so Madam Clerk, March 23rd.
Town council motion to-
Same mover and seconder, Mr. Chair?
Yeah, Councilor Corr, second.
Thank you.
Any other discussion on this bylaw? Councilor Trophy.
Right now, until you vote on the 23rd, that's an amendment. So if you want to just take a vote and then we know the date is the 23rd, then you're back to the original as amended.
Okay.
So if you just want to vote on the 23rd right now,
Oh,
then that takes you back to the other amendment on the 23rd.
okay. Yeah, Councilor Trophy.
But he would address that after you,
Oh.
unless he's talking about the
Okay.
23rd.
Okay. Oh,
Okay, so your vote right now is for
Okay.
March 23rd.
okay. So all those on the motion for the bringing it back to the 23rd. All those in favor, all those against, motion passes.
Okay, so Mr. Mayor, now your motion on the floor is that the consideration be postponed until March 23rd and that the Cannabis Control Committee be authorized to prepare responses to the cannabis letters on tonight's agenda and continue to work with Airden Burles on the matter.
Okay. And would you like to speak to that, Councilor Trophy?
I'd just like to ask for a recorded vote for that one, please.
Sorry?
I would just like to ask for a recorded vote for that, please.
Oh, on the motion itself. Any other comments on this? Okay. Madam Clerk, please conduct the vote.
So on a motion by Councillor Hahn, seconded by Councillor Corr, that consideration of the proposed bylaw at agenda item 14 be postponed until March 23rd, and that the Cannabis Control Committee be authorized to prepare responses to the cannabis letters as contained on this evening's agenda, and to continue to work with Airden Burles on this matter. If you are in favor, say yes. If you are opposed, say no. Councillor Cholfie.
Yes.
Counselor Hahn.
Yes.
Counselor Hildebrand.
Yes.
Counselor Kaur.
Yes.
Counselor Stewart.
Yes.
Counselor Wink.
Yes.
Mayor Junkin.
No.
Thank you. The vote carries.
Thank you.
Yep, okay. Second delegation tonight is on 5G LED, Mr. Roman Shapoval.
Hit the mic first? Oh, okay, gotcha. Okay. Well, everybody, excuse me, good evening.
Yeah, to the mic.
Yep. Thank you for giving me the opportunity to speak in front of you all tonight. My name is Roman Shapoval. I grew up in the Garden State, otherwise known as New Jersey. I worked as a salesman for a big computer company for 12 years called Micros. Married a beautiful native of Pelham. I moved here over 5 years ago, and I fell in love with your local area. Tonight I want to speak to you about the important topic of 5G or fifth generation cellular and data communications. Because I was a salesman for computers, I don't know how to work technology.
So it's on, so then you can point.
Okay, so just to change the slide.
If you want to change the slide, you just move it
Oh,
here.
gotcha. Okay. All right. That's okay. That's-
I don't know if this is going to show.
Yeah, that's okay. I can just- All right, forgive me. So again, tonight I'm speaking to you about the 5G fifth generation cellular communications. We've all been there before. Cloudy day in the summertime. We forget to take our hat. We think we don't need it. We don't put our sunscreen on. Come back inside. We have a sunburn. Well, what happened? The invisible, non-thermal, electromagnetic frequency of the sun affected our skin. Electromagnetic fields, otherwise known as EMF, have been studied for over 2,000 years. First of which was Ptolemy, a Greek philosopher, scientist. Danish scientist Ørsted discovered that electric currents create magnetic fields in 1819. With his discovery, soon revolutions were underway in electric developments. We have telegraph from Marconi, radio, sonar, and finally we have microwaves. Now the microwaves I'm going to talk to you about tonight are not the boxes in your kitchen, which were invented in 1946, but the microwave Wi-Fi wireless frequency, which oscillates at 2.5 billion times per second. The same speed your microwave works on are these wireless frequencies. 5G will be even faster. Now, these tiny frequencies, which include everything in your home from cordless phones, smart meters, baby monitors, well, like the cloud on that summer day, we have the internet cloud of invisible wireless frequency. Now, how did we get to this cloud? Well, with first generation 1G, we were able to make and get calls on our phones. With 2G, we got text messaging. With 3G, we got pictures. 4G, we got internet. Now 5G, everything's connected. Sounds great, right? Well, here is a chart by NASA. It shows the electromagnetic or EMF spectrum. You'll see a tiny band of visible light. That's the sun that you see. The rest is all the cloud. Everything else is invisible to our human eyes. Like the summer cloud, we have this internet cloud, or EMF cloud, whose non-thermal fields affect us, just like the sun. Which brings me to safety. All the safety standards were based on heat, the threat of the sun that we see. In 1947, a German scientist based this safety standard on electromagnetic fields on heating of tissue. Non-thermal biological effects were not taken into consideration. Much study and research has been done on oxidative stress on the human body. Harvard, an ethics committee of Harvard, recently showed how the FCC, the Federal Communications Commission, which is a governmental body of the United States, is dominated by the industry, telecommunications, which is presumably represents. And there have been no safety tests by the industry on cell phones or their effects on human health for 25 years. It seems like a new iPhone comes out every year, but no safety tests for 25 years. This brings me to LED lights. Now, how are LED lights tied to 5G? These are lights you see when you're driving at night. They're very bright. You have them in stores. They're functional. They do a good job at lighting. However, they also emit a very toxic, excessive blue light frequency that have been shown harmful to human health. Decreased cellular repair. These lights will be on smart poles. The industry put these together so they will have antennas on these light posts, which will transmit a microwave frequency. This is how 5G will be planned to be deployed. Macular degeneration from these lights. Mitochondria, which are the energy cells, engines of our bodies, are also harmed. We have disruption in mood and disruption in sleep. Some additional health concerns and conditions by wireless and 5G. Well, we have heart arrhythmia, cancer, neurodegeneration, depression, insomnia, all from microwave frequencies. Again, 5G will expand this frequency to even more than just your standard microwave oven. Makes one consider the following statistic. In 2010, suicide eclipsed homicide as the second leading cause of death among 15 to 29-year-olds, as noted by the Centers for Disease Control. Which brings me to the bees. Their biochemical changes on the worker bees, their behavior, and reduced physical activity. Nature, which is one of the most peer-reviewed and respected journals, scientific journals on the planet, has also shown that their navigation and ability to pollinate is decreased from these fields. This appeal to the World Health Organization, United Nations, and governments of the world has been put forth by thousands of engineers, scientists, physicians, and electricians, and concerned citizens like myself. And their consensus is that the deployment of 5G constitutes an experiment on humanity and that the environment, and that it is defined as a crime under international law. There have been more than 10,000 peer-reviewed scientific studies that demonstrate harm to human health from radio frequency and electromagnetic fields. Some of these effects include cancer, miscarriages, brain damage, diabetes, autism, and hyperactivity or ADHD. We also have economic impact to consider. The National Association of Realtors are urging regulatory bodies to heed caution with this expansion of new cellular technologies. It can also affect property owners' rights. Antennas and transmitters will be put everywhere. This will also potentially degrade property values. If you already have a cell phone tower on your property, some of these carriers can also add to their infrastructure without having to change your current agreement with them. Some additional concerns. Well, we have wireless and we have wired, fiber optics. Certain countries are going with more fiber optics. Certain cantons in Switzerland have just put a moratorium on 5G technology. Israel as well is wiring. Of course, the health of our people. Climate forecasting models may also be largely affected in weather prediction from all these satellites that are being put up. And the production of these wireless devices also takes precious metals from the earth and is very energy intensive. So tonight, I ask you as a council to please consider putting a moratorium on the installation and deployment of these 5G experimental technologies. And the choice is before us. We can either be a slave to the technology or harness it as we have in the past and use it as the masters of the technology that we were meant to be for the future generations. I ask you, which will we choose? Thank you for your time.
Thank you for that. Thank you for that presentation. I will now ask if council has any questions. Councilor Kaur.
Yes, great presentation. What service do we have in our Fawn Hill area now? And how many towers do we have in our town?
I'm not qualified to answer how many towers we have. I do know that we do have 4G. 5G is said to be tested right now, but without having an industry representative confirm what I'm saying, I would have to say that it's being tested right now because they're saying that they're testing it. So that would, to me, mean that it's already live. And certain routers do have 5G. If you go onto your wireless access on your router, it will say 5G on there.
So, through you, Mr. Mayor, what companies or what providers are going to a 5G system?
Bell, Qualcomm is one of the chip manufacturers. Rogers just has a huge agreement with the government Canada-wide. They are now installing infrastructure. I believe Rogers is the leader in Canada, but Bell as well.
So through you, Mr. Mayor, one final question. What's the difference between 3G and 5G for me? Is it just speed or?
Well, 3G is, 5G is a total revolution. It's the speed you're going to get from 5G may be faster, but if it's wireless, it may not be. It may not be as reliable. 3G, a wired 3G fiber optic line will be more reliable and just as fast, if not faster, than 5G. Because with 5G, now you need to put transmitters everywhere because these millimeter waves don't go that far. So now they're going to be on utility poles, trash cans, water towers, everywhere, so everybody can share this soup. Whereas before, you know, you're getting your own bowl of soup, you know, but now you're going to have to eat from the trough. So that's the difference. 3G, you know, it's still, you're still getting packets of data delivered to you. And also depends on your connection at your house, because you could have 5G, but if you don't have the right wiring, or you have dirty power, that's also going to slow it down. But I would say that the 3G, that's what Israel is keeping, is actually 3G, and they're running fiber optics.
So fiber optics for you, Mr. Mayor, would be the best choice.
To my opinion, that's what I would.
And if I'm not mistaken, Pelham does not have fiber optics. Fort Erie, Port Colborne, everybody else except Pelham, if I'm not mistaken.
To clarify, so everything to the tower, everything is wired to the cell tower. But for you to get wireless, or for you to get fiber optics, it would have to go to the curb, to your house. And yes, many houses, I'm not sure of all of Pelham, but yeah, most do not get it to the curb.
Thank you.
Yeah, thank you for your question.
Any other questions? So then, not a question, a comment. I must say that when this first came up on the agenda, wow, yeah, well, what's this all about? But I did go on the internet, the nowhere of everything, ran a few YouTubes, and it is amazing / frightening how many scientists are exactly stating what you're stating, that this is a dangerous white wavelength that is about to be introduced. So right now, I believe it's just used by the military in crowd control, I believe, of all things. And they actually compared it that when a chemical company, whether it be Dow, Monsanto, wants to put out a new pesticide, they have to test that. And goodness, it takes 10 years probably of testing to get that pesticide proven safe enough before it goes on to the public, into the public realm. And it is kind of scary that when you've got all these scientists and they're bringing it out and they're saying, let's see what happens. So that what they're basically saying is that the humans, we, are going to be the guinea pigs, and let's see what happens in 10 years. So it is scary business. I do encourage anyone to go on an internet and bang in 5Gs, and welcome to the experiment kind of thing. Thank you for actually bringing this to us. Okay. Any other questions? Not seeing any. We thank you for that presentation.
Okay, if anybody wants resources or questions for me, I don't know if I should stay later, but yeah, thank you for your time.
Okay, thank you very much. A motion put forward by Councillor Kaur, seconded by Councillor Trophy. Be it resolved that Council receive for information the delegation provided by Roman Chapoval regarding 5G LED technology. Any further questions? Not seeing any, I'll call the vote. All those in favor? All those opposed? Motion carries. Thank you. What do we got left there? And Diana has a presentation?
No, we have no presentation from the.
Okay, so on 5.3, a report of regional councillor. Diana does not have a report for us tonight. So we go down to number 6, which is adoption of minutes. I'm sorry? Oh, okay. Motion put forward by Councillor Hahn, seconded by Councillor Trophy. Be it resolved that the following minutes be adopted as printed, circulated, and read. 1C-02 2020, regular council minutes of February 3rd, 2020. After regarding and looking at these minutes, any councillor have a question? Not seeing any, I'll call the vote. All those in favor? All those opposed? Motion carries. Thank you. So now we have the consent agenda, part of our consent. items of the agenda. So is there number 8, is there a request to lift consent agenda items for separate consideration by any counselor? And Councillor Trophy.
Yes, I'd like to lift 9.7.1, please.
Thank you. Motion put forward by Councillor Hildebrand, seconded by Councillor Stewart. Be it resolved that the consent agenda items as listed on the February 18th, 2020 council agenda be received and the recommendations contained therein be approved as applicable.
Save and accept.
Yeah, save and accept 9.7.1. Any discussion on any of these consent agendas? Not seeing any. Then I will call the question. All those in favor? All those against? Motion carries. Now we go back to 971. Yep. And now, Councillor, we go back to 9.71. We wish to speak to it.
Thank you. I just wanted a little bit more clarification from the minutes from January 15th, 2020 for the Summerfest in regards to item 10. It says new arches are being redesigned as a permanent structure. They also updated the committee regarding the budget, materials to be used, and the timeline for construction. Just wondering if there is a timeline. Will it be ready for Summerfest? Of the material, as the design changed and things like that? I don't know. Maybe Councillor Wink can answer that.
Councillor Wink or perhaps? Mr. Marr?
Yes, through you, Mr. Mayor. Staff have met with members of the Rotary Club, as well as the college, Niagara College, who will be participating in the construction of the arches. At this time, there is a concept that's in place. We have not received engineered drawings on that concept. The consultant that they've hired, a local consultant who is preparing the design, was to come to council on March 2nd as a delegate to present the proposal that they're planning on bringing forward to council for endorsement. Because of timing, that most likely will get pushed till March 23rd. So timing-wise, staff are still waiting for a package, a design package from the engineer of record, and then staff will be reviewing that. Timing-wise, again, they're dealing with the engineer is dealing with companies that are going to be fabricating the arches. Timing-wise, I can't speak to that until we have a delegation from the committee.
Yeah, the last time they were here, they were talking about partnering up with the Launch Center from the Niagara Catholic School Board. Is that still the case, or did Niagara College jump on board as well?
Sorry, through you, Mr. Mayor. Yes, sorry, it was the school board. My mistake.
I thought it might have been a partnership, maybe.
And they are still involved. However, to the best of my knowledge, their role in the fabrication of the arches will be limited, and there will be another firm that designs structures that will be taking the lead on the construction of the arch.
Great, thanks.
Councillor Hildebrand.
Through you, Mr. Mayor, to Mr. Mark. The professional engineer, he's the engineer of record on the job, and he has all the licenses required to do this kind of construction, and he has experience in that field.
Through you, Mr. Mayor, the engineer that's been retained to complete the design work is a qualified structural and mechanical engineer.
Thank you. Okay. Councillor Stewart.
Just a comment. When they first came to us about building the arches, they were going to be solid laminated beams. And then a prototype of that is on display at the community center. And it's still there after they had changed the design to what we essentially had before, which were hollow plywood beams, and now it's being changed again. So I feel that the prototype design should be removed from the community center, as that no longer, this is like the third iteration, and it is no longer what's going to be built, and it just seems misleading in some way.
Okay, thank you for that. Back to you, Director of Public Works.
Through you, Mr. Mayor, although the makeup of the actual structural components themselves may be changing, the actual look and physical appearance of the arches will not change. Those will be the same, similar to what is shown with the model at the MCC.
Thank you. Is that okay then, Councillor Stewart?
Well, actually, it doesn't feel okay to me, but if that's what it is, it's what it is.
Okay, thank you for that. I do know, like, I have seen the prototypes, all metal now, but I believe, and perhaps they are going to be coated, or not, well, the steel's going to be coated, but then I believe there's going to be wood attached to the outside of the frame. Would that be a correct assumption, or shall we just wait till they show up?
Through you, Mr. Mayor, it was my recommendation of the committee looking after the arch fabrication that they come to council and present what their plan is moving forward. I do understand, as well as they, that there are some concerns with respect to the fabrication and the type of structure that's being put in place. So I've asked them to make sure they come to council as a delegation to make that presentation. So I'd like to defer until that point in time when they can make a proper presentation on their vision going forward.
Okay, and this council looks forward to that presentation. Okay, Councillor Trophy, you're done? Yep. Okay.
We just need a motion to receive those minutes.
Okay, so we need, so it's 9.71.
Right,
Yeah.
and it would be the same mover and seconder.
Okay. So again, we have a motion put forward. Excuse me, let me have a drink here. Excuse me. I have a motion put forward by Councillor Hildebrand, seconded by Councillor Stewart. Be resolved that consent agenda item 9.71, as listed on the February 18th, 2020 council agenda, be received and the recommendation contained therein be approved as applicable.
And it's just to receive the Summerfest minutes.
Oh, and also to receive the Summerfest minutes at 9.71. Any more debate on that? Not seeing it. Those in favor? Any opposed? Thank you. Motion carries. I'll be down to the, turn the page. Items of, so, wait, unfinished business?
So the bylaw was postponed. You are now on the motions and notices of motion, and you have the motion as presented on the agenda by Councillors Hahn and Kaur with regard to the airport.
Okay. So we have a motion brought forward by Councillor Hahn, seconded by Councillor Kaur. Whereas the Rural Economic Development, RED, program offered by the Ontario Ministry of Agriculture, Food and Rural Affairs focuses on economic growth by offering cost-share funding to municipalities for outcome-based projects that will address barriers to economic development, enhance economic growth, and attract investment to Ontario's rural communities. And whereas there are two funding streams available, being one, the Strategic Economic Infrastructure stream of the program provides up to 30% in cost-shared funding for minor capital projects that advance economic development and investment opportunities. And the Economic Diversification and Competitiveness stream provides up to 50% in cost-shared funding for projects that remove barriers to business and job growth, attract investment, attract or retain a skilled workforce, strengthen sector and regional partnerships, and diversify regional economies. Whoa. And this is a long one. And whereas the Niagara Central Dorothy Rungling Airport is located in Pelham and is a municipally owned airport operated by a commission representing the communities of Pelham, Welland, Port Colborne, and Wainfleet. And whereas, while the airport offers aviation fuel service per a contract negotiated by the previous commission, this existing arrangement is not considered cost-effective by the current commission, as it does not allow for 24/7 access to fuel, nor does the commission receive maximum monetary benefit from fuel sales, as it currently must pay for an external provider to operate the fuel pump. And whereas utilizing the RED grant program to assist in the purchase and installation of a pay-at-the-pump 24/7 self-serve fuel system will serve to increase revenue generated by fuel sales by a minimum of 50%, in addition to increasing the potential for new fuel sales by visiting aircraft that require fuel at any time, day or night. And whereas the purchase and installation cost of the fuel system is estimated at $33,659.95 plus tax, and whereas if successfully awarded, the grant funding could result in savings of 30 to 50% for this initiative. Any remaining cost will be funded by the commission. And whereas the deadline for applying for this grant is February 24th, 2020, and be it resolved that staff be directed to investigate the RED grant and, if feasible, make required applications to be considered for the said grant, and that upon passing this motion by Pelham Council, that the clerks in the municipalities of Welland, Port Colborne, and Wainfleet be notified as soon as possible so that they can inform their respective councils of this decision. Councillor Hahn, your motion, would you like to speak to it?
Well, is there any questions in regards to this? It's fairly self-explanatory. It's essentially, we're just asking for support, not financial support, but support to proceed to the grant that is available, that the town's not using for other purposes, but that we'd be able to use for the purpose of a self-serve 24/7 pay-at-the-pump system at the airport. So it'll be 24/7 access. Right now, it's very prohibitive for a pilot to fuel his aircraft unless it's between kind of a 9 to 5 hour, as well as we're paying 50% of our fuel to the pumper of the fuel. So we're missing out on a lot of revenue. So this would help the airport in an economic sense. It seems like a bit of a no-brainer because there's a grant available for 30 to 50% of the cost of this. Now, the rest would be funded by the commission.
Any questions on this motion? If not, I will call the motion. All those in favor? All those opposed? Motion is passed. And thank you, Councillor Hahn, for bringing that forward. Motion put forward by Councillor Hildebrand, seconded by Councillor Stewart. Be resolved that the following bylaw be read a first, second, and third time and passed, being a bylaw number 4203/2020 to adopt, ratify, and confirm the proceedings of Council of the Town of Pelham at its regular meeting held on the 18th day of February 2020. All those in favor? All those opposed? This meeting. Sorry, banged it too soon. Motion put forward by Councillor Hildebrand, seconded by Councillor Stewart. Be resolved that this regular meeting of council be adjourned until the next regular meeting scheduled for March 2nd, 2020 at 5:30 PM. All those in favor? All those opposed? Now I can. This meeting is adjourned.
Council, we're set to go.
Oh, wait, glasses. Good evening, everyone. We're back to do the Committee of the Whole for Tuesday, February 18th. I see we have quorum. No one left us. Adoption of agenda. Thank you. Motion put forward by Councillor Wink that the agenda for the February 18th, 2020 regular meeting of COW be adopted. Any questions, changes on it? Not seeing any. Ask the vote. All those in favor? All those against? Thank you. Motion carries. At this time, I have to ask any councillor have a pecuniary interest or in general nature thereof to declare. Don't see any. Ask the clerk to please note that. Now we go into department reports. And we have a motion put forward by Councillor Hahn that committee receive report 20, no, should I be reading this now?
Yes, no, now and that opens discussion.
Oh, okay. A committee receive report number 2020-14 and recommend to council that the land use study in Appendix A be received for information and that staff be directed to fulfill the recommendations of the land use study. Any questions? Yeah, that's it. Any questions on this? Councilor Trophy. I thought we had this.
After reading the report, I'm prepared to receive it, but I'm not prepared to fulfill the recommendations at this point yet.
Okay.
So I would ask council to receive the report at this time, but not fulfill the recommendations.
Okay. Any other comments, questions on this? Councilor Corr.
Yes, through you, Mr. Mayor. To the director, 5.61, you mentioned something about a 27% increase of property, an increase of 27.1 land increase of property values. I don't get that. You're telling me a person that has a home beside a cannabis processing, their property is going to go up 27%? Where do we find these numbers, and are they numbers related back to the Niagara region? And I know you talked about Leamington and Eastern Canada. Why can't we get facts from the Niagara region, not from numbers that look good on a piece of paper?
Mr. Mayor, through you, as indicated in the report, these were statistics from the Rideau St. Lawrence region. We don't have statistics for Niagara. There haven't been any studies done in Niagara, so this is what we could find as comparators.
Okay, through you, Mr. Mayor. How much input did the CCC have with this report?
Mr. Mayor, through you, this is a staff report. Certainly, there's a lot of conversations and discussions that we had with the CCC relating to the various impacts, but it is a staff report. The report was shared with the CCC, and some members of the CCC provided comments to staff.
Thank you.
Any other questions? Councilor Trophy.
Yes, in the report, under other municipal approaches, page 13, section 4.02, page 17, 4.13. It says a number of municipalities amended their zoning bylaw to provide regulations for medical marijuana production following legalization in 2001. And some of those municipalities, as well as others, are in the process of updating their regulations to include recreational cannabis production. Did you have the opportunity to review the proposed emission regulation for cannabis production and processing operations in Vancouver?
Mr. Mayor, through you, there was a proposed report that came out for Metro Vancouver back in, I believe it was May.
last year. It's a discussion paper. We have certainly reviewed that, and they have not adopted the recommendations in that discussion paper as of yet.
I got another question. Can cannabis production facilities be located in the town's industrial zone?
Mr. Mayor, through you, currently the zoning in the industrial area, which is that area along Weber Road, it permits industrial uses and warehousing and those kind of things. It doesn't permit agricultural type uses or the growing of crops.
What if cannabis was considered as industrial use, like other municipalities?
Mr. Mayor, through you, if that is something that council wishes to do and include in the industrial area, that is a zoning, would require an amendment to the zoning bylaw to permit that. As we know, the provincial and federal government do recognize that the growing of cannabis is an agricultural use.
Okay. One more question. Can you give me an example of case law that demonstrates municipalities cannot prohibit legal uses within their boundaries? That's on page 22 of the report.
Mr. Mayor, through you, I can't quote the specific case law, but I'm aware of similar case law with respect to adult entertainment parlors. And in the decisions with respect to those uses, that's often been quoted. I'm aware of that in the city of Thorold, for example. There was quite some time ago in the 80s a case with regards to adult entertainment parlors there.
Just one last one here. On page 21, the Ministry of Agriculture, Farming and Rural Affairs recommends employing the SMART principles to avoid and reduce nuisance complaints. SMART being a separation, magnitude reduction, alteration, reduction of occurrences, and timing. I agree with the separation. It says isolate buildings, livestock, and storage as far from neighbors as possible. But when we get to the timing part, it says contact all neighbors a few days in advance of events such as manure spreading to give them time to take appropriate action. The odor from cannabis sometimes will go up to 2 kilometers. Would it be feasible for these cannabis production facilities to notify neighbors up to 2 or 3, 4 kilometers away?
Mr. Mayor, through you, that example was included in the report to give an example of how the ministry has provided some guidelines for other types of agricultural businesses and operations in terms of how they operate. So could there be a similar type of principle applied to cannabis? Certainly there have been discussions with the province of Ontario to look at similar types of strategies to mitigate the adverse impacts of cannabis uses in the agricultural area and on residential properties and other sensitive land uses. And those have been discussions that have occurred, not only with ourselves, but with other municipalities, and they continue to be ongoing with the province.
Yes, through you, Mr. Mayor. Just wanted, how is the short-term rental file going? I know it's not related to the cannabis, but can I not speak to it?
I'll ask the clerk. I think we're stretching the agenda. We are talking about a land use study for cannabis.
Short-term use.
Isn't short-term or community planning and development? So,
Through you, Mr. Mayor, we are on, sorry. Through you, Mr. Mayor, we are on agenda item 4.1.1, Cannabis Land Use Report. So that's the recommendation that's before the
okay,
committee
thank
at
you.
this
Sorry.
time.
Council Link.
So through you, Mr. Mayor, to the director. Recently, council approved the construction of a home on Canberra Road. The bylaws indicated that a house could not be built within 300 meters of a poultry barn.
a minor variance was granted for 200 meters and a notice of same was to be registered on title. Why is there a 300-meter buffer for a house being built near a poultry barn, yet the converse is not true when an ag building is built near an existing residence?
Mr. Mayor, through you, that is the current clause in our zoning bylaw that deals with livestock, and it's only with respect to livestock operations. It doesn't address any other type of agricultural activity. So if there are any other type of agricultural activity that needed a setback, we don't have any guidance material related to that. The provincial minimum distance separation guidelines as well only deal with livestock operations.
So livestock are an agricultural operation, as is cannabis. So why can't we apply the same? We're looking at I'm looking at the conclusion and in the report under 60. Let me pull this up. Bear with me. We're suggesting 150 meters from a sensitive receptor is not a firm requirement by municipalities. I would like staff to present to council showing the impact of 200 meters and 250 meters from receptors. Has staff considered increased distances above the 300 meters for schools and parks?
Yes, Mr. Mayor, through you, if you look, there are a series of maps that's attached as the appendix to the report. The last map deals with sensitive receptors, which is a 500-meter separation distance from sensitive land uses. This would also include parks and so forth. The second map illustrates a 300 meters separation distance from sensitive land use receptors, and the first map is the 150-meter radius distance separation.
And I understand the 150 meters, but residents are sensitive receptors, schools are, parks are. What I'm suggesting is, why are we not looking at schools and parks and have further distances from those areas?
Mr. Mayor, through you, when we look at the definition of sensitive land use receptors, they include residences, schools, and parks. They don't differentiate between that. Each individual type of use, they aggregate sensitive land use receptors as one type of distance separation.
Any other questions?
Well, not a question, but just a comment. I don't understand why we can't have extended distances from schools and parks as totally different from residences.
To you, Madam Planner and Director, would that need is that something we could look into as a town, but that would have to be an amendment to our planning bylaws?
No, Mr. Mayor, through you, that is something that we could consider, or council could consider, should it wish to do so.
Okay, thank you. Any other questions to the report? Councilor Trophy.
This is not a question, it's just a comment. In general, the report is fairly good, so I want to thank staff for their time and effort that they put into this report. And hopefully, within the next couple of weeks, we can come together with the committee as well and adjust the report and the recommendations that will suit all.
So if I don't see any more questions, I would perhaps a couple of questions to the director. It's noted in your report that the odor has been detected 2 kilometers from facilities, and yet the 150 minimum setback was addressed in your report. And I see Niagara-on-the-Lake is proposing 1,500 meters. I was just wondering what your justification would be for the 150 meters, please?
Well, Mr. Mayor, through you, the 150-meter distance separation is one component. We're also recommending that any new cannabis producers would do odor modeling dispersion studies and have mitigation plans in place, that those would be studies that we would require in advance of them being established so we can evaluate the impact. The 150 is the minimum, and if there isn't any odor, and if they can mitigate the impacts of the odor satisfactorily, then the 150-meter setback would be appropriate.
Okay, thank you for that. I will note that a resident, and I think we can call him an expert, I won't name him. He works in business in odors. He's done a lot of consultation with the Cannabis Control Committee, and he has been on, I believe he spoke at the public meeting we had, and he thought that we should focus on exhaust systems more than on the setbacks. As the director of planning has just stated, that if you have a system that has been qualified through a third party regulation and does indeed come up with a 0% smell, which I think is attainable. I've talked to people in the industry, then the setback becomes not as important, perhaps, as we would think it is. The whole thing is, can we reach the zero? That's the question. My only other comment is on this industry. Talking to, again, people who work in the industry, it is a young industry. As such, they do not share data, and I think that's the one. That's the one thing that's holding this industry back, and it's holding the town communities back, is that when somebody gets to a point where they're satisfied with their odor emissions, they don't have a trade magazine that they say, this is what works. They treat it as a very big secret. And anybody who works in the industry has got to sign NDAs so they can't go to the next industry, oh, this works over for Joe Blow. Once somebody finds something at this stage of the game, unfortunately, they're keeping their secrets to themselves. You get an established industry. I was a dairy farmer. We always shared everything with the Department of Agriculture. Same thing with any number of industries. But because this is a young industry, and as to how many have actually hit the golden spot that they have no emissions, it's a hard industry to get information on. Other than that, that's my only comment. Any other questions, Councillor Hildebrand?
I'd like to make a comment from an engineering standpoint. I was going to talk about this in waste, but I'm going to start here now. Our company, which was a U.S. corporation, one of our expertise was burning garbage. We burn garbage in New York City, Los Angeles, London, England, all over the world. We have a plant that I engineered. It was all under my engineering name in Niagara Falls, New York. I'm telling you, the air we got coming out of that plant was purer than the air we took in. I've offered my help in February to these cannabis companies for engineering expertise on the subject. They don't even want to talk to me. I can tell you that for a fact. I've called their office. I've called the MP to try and get a contract. I even had the municipal MPP call the owner's mother to try and get me to have contact with these people and give them some help. They're not interested. So they're not spending the money, as far as I'm concerned, as an engineer, to get rid of odor. Just a comment.
Thank you, Council. Councilor Trophy.
Yeah, I just want to comment to your statement, Mr. Mayor, when you talk about the setbacks aren't really a concern if the odor is taken care of. There's a lot of impacts in this community. One of them is the supplemental lighting that you'll see in the report. We got noise impacts. We have traffic impacts, groundwater, property value. All that plays a factor with the setbacks. If you have no odor, but you have a facility like this, 100, 150 kilometers away, or 100, 150 meters away from you, you know as well as I do that there's 200 to 300 cars there parked in their parking lot, and there's traffic, there's noise, etc. There's generators there. So the impacts or the setbacks aren't just related to odor.
And I thank you for that. I guess I was referring to the minimum setback, which I would believe is regulated to the micros. I agree with you fully that when you get into the big ones, you're exactly right. But if you're talking a micro grow, whether it be, I don't know, 20, I don't know what micro is, 40 plants, that's what I'm thinking of. I realize the concern is, as you say, the big boys. You're absolutely right.
Well, yeah, it's just like when you say, as long as the odor is gone, the setbacks don't really mean anything. But it's not just about odor. So I just want to make that clear that everybody's on the same page.
I concede the point. Okay, any other questions? Not seeing any, then we'll call the vote on this motion. Oh, so,
You have the motion here.
yes. So the motion is put forward by Councillor Hahn, that committee receive report number 2020-14 and recommend to council that the land use study in Appendix A be received for information and that staff be directed to fulfill the recommendations of the land use study. So we already had Councillor Trophy.
Yes. I would like to amend that, please, to say that for council to receive the report and to work with the committee and to fulfill the recommendations, or to look at the recommendations.
No. Okay. No, you don't need a seconder at Cow. I'm sorry. Yes.
Sorry, so
Yeah.
to receive the report and work with the Cannabis Control Committee
To look at the recommendations, or to come up with recommendations.
Perhaps, could you read that back to us, please?
So through you, Mr. Mayor, there is a motion by Councillor Cholfi that the report be received and that staff work with the Cannabis Control Committee to look at the recommendations and provide feedback. So can I take that to be referred to the Cannabis Control Committee? Is that the intent?
Yes, please.
Okay, so discussion on this amendment, if there is any. Councilor Wing?
Yes, through you, Mr. Mayor. Staff have done a wonderful job on this. And the Cannabis Control Committee's been doing a lot of great work with respect to this. I don't think it's necessarily that they work with it. I think that the Cannabis Control Committee receives a report and they can provide input. But I think staff have and take that input under consideration. But it's not up to necessarily the Cannabis Committee to recommend all sorts of changes. Just provide input, and then as a council, we receive that input.
Any other comments? Any other comments?
Yes. The whole intent here is to receive the report this evening, is what I want. But when we say we're going to allow staff to go ahead with the recommendations around this report, I'm not prepared to receive that tonight, or to do that. So I would like staff to continue to work with the Cannabis Control Committee to come up with a set of regulations that we agree on.
Any other questions or comments on this report before we call it the vote on the amendment? Not seeing any, I will call, I'm sorry.
Well, and what happens if there's an impasse between the committee and staff?
CAO?
It is entirely foreseeable that there will be impasses as between the two. Reasonable people can disagree in this world. Seeing as the other cannabis item is returned to this council on March the 23rd, the need for this council to take definitive action on March 2nd is, well, unclear to me at best. If this were to come back on March 23rd, that would give an opportunity for members of the Cannabis Control Committee to make written or verbal, not for me to tell them how to do their thing, but make some submissions and pointed submissions on the work product that planning staff could interact with. Whether that changes anything or not, I can't say, of course, but that would provide that opportunity, a period of time. We're pretending as if there's some sort of magic to March 2nd, and there is not. Seeing as we're going to be discussing cannabis on the 23rd, we may as well, that would give some time for that interaction and to see what comes out of that, be it fruitful or otherwise.
Not seeing any other questions rising, I will call I'm going to read this one more time.
So you have an amendment on
I'm sorry, yes, we're doing the amendment, and I guess the clerk has already read that. Anybody want us to read it again, or everyone is happy with that? Okay, I'm sorry. Okay, clerk?
That committee receive the report and refer it to the Cannabis Control Committee, and to permit the Cannabis Control Committee to provide feedback on the recommendations.
Okay, Council? Yeah. Oh. Okay, any other questions on that? Then before we forget it, we'll ask the vote. All those in favor of the amendment? Okay, and any opposed? Okay. Now, we vote on that committee, VVC Report 2020-14, and recommend to council that the land use study.
It's going to be the motion as
Also
amended
this,
now.
okay, so we just have to do that. Okay, I'm sorry. So on the motion as amended, that we just voted on, we vote again. Any discussion on the amendment? Probably not. Okay, so all those in favor on the motion as amended, all those in favor? Yeah, and any opposed? Not seeing any. The motion passes. Okay, I keep losing my pen. Thank you. And now, yeah, I'm sorry. Councilor Court.
Yes, through you, Mr. Mayor, to the clerk, could we go back to 4.1 then? And I could ask the question about short-term rentals?
Through you, Mr. Mayor, there is no report, or there is no monthly planning report to provide that opportunity listed on tonight's agenda.
Okay, thank you.
Okay. Excuse me, where are we? Corporate services?
Yes.
Oh. We have before us a motion put forward by Councillor Hahn. That committee received report number 2020-0016, Corporate Services, and recommend to council that council receive report number 2020-0016, Corporate Services for information. Any questions or comments on this report? Councillor Wink.
So through you, Mr. Mayor, to the treasurer, and you're probably waiting for this question. Did we receive the transit grant by year end?
Through you, Mr. Mayor, no, we haven't.
So has there been any input provided, the reasons why we didn't receive that grant from the province?
Through you, Mr. Mayor, we issued our report. There was an amendment to the report, and after that, we had to wait 6 weeks. So we're just in that waiting period.
Okay,
but
thank you.
We should be receiving the funds any day now.
Okay, thanks.
Corr.
Yes, through you, Mr. Mayor, to the treasurer. Would that have an effect on the new contract with the transit with the Niagara region? Because we quoted them a price with the rebate. Now, if we don't get the rebate, are we still obligated to pay the $70,000? Or we reduce that price?
I can. Okay, sorry, I didn't know if Vicky was okay.
No, you go.
Yeah, so through you, Mr. Mayor, with regards to the transit grant, the Director of Recreation, Culture and Wellness, and the CEO and I spoke to the ministry folks with regards to the grant, and they were supportive of the partnership with the region. So that won't have an impact at all with regards to that. Our discussion with the Niagara region is that whatever the net amount that we have in our budget, whatever the town is paying for the transit, it's not going to exceed that. So that's the agreement, regardless of what happens with grants or anything else. So no additional budget impact for 2020.
Any other questions? Oh, Councilor Trophy?
Yeah, in regards to the MCC report, their financial report 4.2.1, note number 5 there, it said that we're going to be under budget for 2019 for the advertising costs. Can I get an explanation on that one, please?
Through you, Mr. Mayor, with regards to this is the arena advertising. So we have an agreement with our current contract that we have that it's $30,000 a year. But what we have is a timing issue of when that started. So it started in July of the year and it goes into May of the following year. So it's just a timing issue. Like we will get the funds, but we're still transitioning between the first year when we started. I don't know if you want to add anything else to that, Vicki.
So through you, Mr. Mayor, the actual contract is from basically July to June. So it's 2019, 2020, started in 2018, 2019. So you're half of a year difference.
Thank you. And my next question there would be, this one might be similar, just not sure what it is. Puck boards cost. What are the puck boards?
Through you, Mr. Mayor, it's actually it's a surface that we use along the boards of the arenas, as well as we use it. There's an area that we have an area that kids can use for stick and puck that's off the surface, and we've had to purchase the puck boards to protect the area.
So the puck boards that we're talking about, they're on the inside of the arena? Like, are they protecting what do they protect?
No, so the puck boards are protecting the wall outside of the surface of the ice.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Any other questions? Oh, Councilor Hahn.
I'm just looking at the MCC information, and just with regards to the telephone, I noticed there's a note down below because we're 200 and something % over actual to budget. It just seems, have we researched other companies? I mean, there's, whether it's Cogeco, whether it's Bell, it just seems an exorbitant amount of money to spend. And I realize there's elevators and they have to have a dedicated line, but are we looking at this? Because even now it's estimated at $15,000 for the year, but we budgeted $4 and change.
Yep, so through you, Mr. Mayor, it is the elevator cost that's causing the original budget variance. So that's something that we have to put the telephones in the elevator as a safety feature. So, and then the other one is Bell. I mean, we're using the Bell lines with regards to that. So I don't think there's anything else we can do with that.
So we've costed it out between Cogeco and Bell?
I could follow up on that, but I think we have to use Bell for the safety of the elevators. I can confirm that and get back to you. Okay, thank you.
Thank you. Any other questions? Oh, Council Wink?
So through you, Mr. Mayor, just as a matter of housekeeping on Appendix 2 under expenditures, on page 1 you show animal control as note 8, and right below it, general administration, you show the note as 8. So animal control should be note 7. You're welcome.
Okay, thank you for that, Councillor. Any more questions, comments? Not seeing any, I'll call the vote. All those in favor? All those against? Motion carries. Motion put forward by Councillor Hildebrand that committee receive report number 2020-002 for information, and that committee recommend that council approve the 2019 Pelham Distribution System Summary Report. Any questions, comments on this report? Not seeing any. I'll call the vote. All those in favor? All those opposed? Thank you.
Do you, Mr. Mayor, to
yes.
the clerk? So we can't ask any questions at 4.3 for the fire and bylaw service or 4.4 because there's no reports? I don't get this. Like, so that means they don't put a report in, we can't ask questions.
I'll let the clerk comment on that.
Through you, Mr. Mayor, I believe the councillor may be referring to the previous monthly CAL reports that were submitted. Those are now being prepared on a quarterly basis. So there'll be a report from each department head on a quarterly basis. The reports that are listed on the agenda right now are topic specific.
I don't agree with it, but. So before we had once a month, we had the department's report on a regular basis. Now it's going to be every quarter, so it would be 4 times a year?
Through you, Mr. Mayor, that's correct. The CAO may wish to have some additional comments, but that's the way moving forward.
Through you, Mr. Mayor, if I'm not mistaken, I wasn't aware of it, and I don't think most of us wasn't aware of that change.
Perhaps clarity from the CAO?
Well, I think the main complaint at the moment is an inability to address an item that's not on the agenda, and I can only say that the reason the Municipal Act functions as it does, and this municipality functions as it does, is that members of the public have a lot of interest in the items on the agenda. They knew, for instance, cannabis was to be discussed tonight, and a lot of people came out to hear about that. Gypsy moth is coming up. They're identifiable humans sitting in the audience because they want to hear about that. The reason we don't bring up short-term accommodation this evening is because there are dozens and dozens, if not hundreds of people in this community interested in that, and we don't have any materials prepared. They should be able to, the reason we publish agendas ahead of time is so that people who are interested in a given item can come out and or log in online, as the case may be, but can interact and hear what's being said about the item. So that's the substantive reason why we only talk about the items on the agenda. It isn't a matter of control, it's about giving the community the opportunity to engage with whatever they want, issue they want to engage on. Beyond that, more generally, this council and this committee has extremely long, you have a very ambitious, admirable frankly, a list of items you want to get to. This community has a number of significant issues. We go to the max and we extend beyond the maximum meeting time multiple times a month. There isn't room for more reports. Those reports take hours and hours and hours of senior staff time. And to go from a monthly report that has only very minor statistics down to a quarterly is actually a very good management tool, because we spend more time writing about the things we did for 2 weeks. Remember, there's a 2-week lag when it comes to us publishing things. So giving you monthly reports means that every sort of 2 weeks later, we're starting to write that again. That delivers almost no value. If we're aware that there's something you want to speak on, all that's required is any one of you indicating by phone call or email to myself there's something you'd like to talk about on a future agenda, and we will put that on the agenda. We are here to work for you and to be responsive. But structurally, we have to make best use of the time available to us. And we already have these overwhelming, very lengthy agendas, which is why we've made the decision to come every other month, or quarterly, every 3 months really, with the area updates. But routinely, we have more than enough substantive work to keep us going for a very long period of time.
Thank you. Councillor?
Through you, Mr. Mayor, to the CEO. So that means citizens would not, if we have questions, it would take next month or next quarter to answer those questions. And I know you mentioned about emails. So moving forward, if Ron Core wanted a question about short-term rentals, how would he go about it?
No. There we are, 50-50. Well, there are multiple ways to accomplish that. If it's simply a relatively innocuous or quick question, of course, merely contacting either the relevant director or myself can get that answered. If we're looking for a more substantive report, i.e. using a lot of staff time being a resource for which the community pays us in salary, then either the notice of motion process is how council forces items to be on an agenda. And you're right, that does take 2 meetings to the provision of the notice of motion and then ultimately discussing it and a debate amongst yourselves and council approval. That's one mechanism you have to force anything on the agenda, if that's your preference. But generally, just conversations to understand when things are coming up. We do, in fact, you get the minutes of our meetings, you understand that we're working on things, you refer items back to staff, and you typically give us deadlines, and we actually are in the habit of meeting those deadlines. So typically you know when you're going to hear more on any given topic. That is our system.
Anything further on that, Councillor Corey?
No, thank you.
Anything further on this report?
You haven't presented that motion yet.
Oh, I haven't read it yet? Okay, here we go. Oh, I'm sorry, yes. Motion put forward by Councillor Stewart. The Committee of the Whole received report number 2020-0017, Town of Pelham Gypsy Moth Policy, and the 2020 Gypsy Moth Management Options, and that a Forestry Health Reserve Fund be established and the necessary bylaw be prepared, and that Committee of the Whole recommend that Council approve the Public Works Gypsy Moth Management Policy S801-14. Comments and questions on this report? Councillor Hahn.
Just curious, as far as referencing other areas, other municipalities, other provinces, has that been done? And if so, is there a list, or did I overlook where other municipalities we've looked into? In other words, are we reinventing the wheel? Has this been done before in other places?
Through you, Mr. Mayor, staff have been in contact with other municipalities, such as Hamilton, Mississauga, Burlington, and to the best of our knowledge, there is not one specific policy that deals strictly and only exclusively with gypsy moths. The other municipalities have integrated pest management policies that they use to control outbreaks of invasive species, but the town of Pelham is actually one of the first municipality, if not the first municipality, to have a policy that specifically deals with the gypsy moth issue. But there has been consultation with other municipalities that do have issues with gypsy moths, and we've used that research working with those other municipalities to develop the policy.
Thank you. That answer your question, Counselor? Okay, thank you. Any other questions? Counselor Hildebrand.
Through you, Mr. Mayor. So if I'm reading your report right, you're suggesting that we have the cost of spraying distributed over the entire tax base. Is that correct?
Through you, Mr. Mayor. When we were writing this report, the purpose of the report was to bring forward a policy that would guide staff and guide the town in how we deal with the gypsy moth infestation issue. As you're aware, in the fall, we did retain the services of a consultant to do an infestation survey for us. Once the leaves came down in the late fall, they worked through December, January to do their field work and try to get a picture of what the infestation looks like in 2020. At the time of writing this report, we've received information from the consultant in the form of a draft report, which kind of laid out what we were looking at in 2020. So we have a budget that's approved, current budget that's approved to deal with the gypsy moth issue of $150,000. That includes the cost to do the spraying. It also includes the cost to do the administration of the program itself. So we have roughly $110,000 to conduct a spray program. We set thresholds for infestations that show up in the policy of 2,500 egg masses per hectare. The draft report that we received indicated that there was substantially more land that exceeded those minimum thresholds. So the infestation in 2020 is expected to be similar to 2019. And without having this information in the past, the information we have now in 2020, the scientific approach that we've used, kind of gives us more reassurance of what the issue is we have on hand. And unfortunately, the infestations are quite substantive in the town of Pelham, both inside the urban areas and in the rural areas. So the idea was with the information we received from the draft report, we wanted to bring to council basically that, bring to you the findings of bioforest work and kind of what we're facing in 2020. So in the report, we laid out some options for council to consider and debate with respect to how we as staff and as a town move forward with respect to a successful program in 2020.
Councilor Dunn, Council? Oh, okay. Councilor Core?
Yes, through you, Mr. Mayor, through the treasurer. Could we afford option number 3? And is there a way of budgeting the $1 million? Or is there other ways of financing?
So through you, Mr. Mayor, if we go with option number 3, which is an additional $930,000 of cost to the approved 2020 budget, it will be a tax increase of 6.64% on top of the 5.95% that has been already approved for 2020. So this will be a total of 12.59% to the tax base from last year. What it represents is that for the average household, to cover the additional $930,000 for the gypsy moth spray is approximately $118 for the average household.
And would that be once once or twice, or once a year or twice in a year?
Through you, Mr. Mayor, if councillor feels that this is a cost that is going to be incurred for this year, then we can add it for this year. When we do the 2021 budget, we will reevaluate to say how much money do we want to put into the Gypsy Moth line. Right now, the existing 2020 budget has $150,000. So if we want to go to $1,040,000, then we're going to have to increase the tax base. If in 2021 we think $150,000 is sufficient, then we drop the tax increase. We would drop it by the 6.64 from this year.
Councilor Hildebrand.
Through you, Mr. Mayor. Please explain to me, what is the average house price you're basing that tax increase on?
348.
We're basing it, I don't have it in front of me, but this is on the assessed house value, not the house price. There's a difference between a market value and an assessed value. So the assessed value, I think it's approximately $350,000.
Councilor Wink.
However, we have new homes being built in this area, and their assessed value is closer to market value, and a lot of those homes are $800,000-900,000. So you're looking at probably triple the cost of a tax increase to them as what's being presented here. Just a comment. You don't have to comment back on that. In option number 2, through you, Mr. Mayor, does staff have any indication as to where the 90 acres of private property is located that would be sprayed?
Through you, Mr. Mayor, the infestation surveys that we received do identify areas where that 90 hectares could be sprayed. What the report did was basically looked at the whole town. Looked at urban areas, looked at rural areas. At this point in time, staff, as well as the consultant, have not developed any spray blocks. So we have not developed any type of spray program as of yet. So the approximately 90 hectares of property that would be sprayed privately, at this point in time, we haven't decided that.
Go ahead.
So through you, Mr. Mayor, how long would that determination be? So is it a month, 2 months to do the work to determine what gets sprayed, or? Because we're pushing up again to deadlines. I think it's got to be sprayed in May.
Correct.
Right?
Through you, Mr. Mayor, that's correct. So the spraying will take place during 2 applications. It'll be taking place in late May and early June, weather dependent. So as of right now, we do have a draft. We actually have a final report now in hand, staff, which we will be bringing to council on March 2nd with a presentation, a delegation from our consultant, Bioforest, who will be presenting the findings of their report. In order to proceed with a spray program, staff will be bringing forward a report with a recommendation to proceed with extending their current assignment to include the assisting staff in developing a spray program. And at that time, we'll develop spray blocks based on council's wish and decision on how we move forward and the quantity of spraying that we actually do. And the development of the spray blocks will be fairly quick. So we are working against a tight timeline. That's 100% correct. We're confident that if we come with a report in early March, we'll still be able to be well within our timelines of getting a successful program off in 2020.
No, Councilor?
So through you, Mr. Mayor, to the CAO, is this to just be received, or are we picking options on this today?
Council has some choice before it. Whatever, you'll recall you're sitting as committee. So whatever you decide tonight is not your final binding decision. Whatever you decide this evening, though, one would anticipate will be heavily commented upon in the media and in the community at large. So it will give us the sort of, on March 2nd, we anticipate having, beg pardon, which is your next meeting, by the by, that presentation from Bioforest. And so you'll have the expert at the podium to whom you can pose questions. What this report is meant to signify are all of the realistic options that we thought, in conjunction with the resident experts, sort of span the gamut from $1 million to this more or less nothing, to the 150 that's already been approved and various points in between. Those are sort of the options that are present before you. We're obviously hoping to get some guidance, but whatever decision you make tonight, you could, of course, defer your decision 2 weeks, but that doesn't exactly give a lot for the public to react to one way or the other. So assuming you have the debate we anticipate you having this evening and come to some sort of decision, you yourselves will be the feedback mechanism, and in 2 weeks we'll have the expert here, and presumably that night you're going to make a binding decision whether you vary what you do tonight or stick with it. Of course, only time will tell. But that's the anticipated timeline. So that March 2nd will be the penultimate decision, whatever that may be.
If I can, Councillor Hahn, before you are talking, if I can comment. So on the report, my computer's crashed, so I don't have it in front of me. But first of all, I just want to thank, it's not actually a committee we had, but a group that worked on this. And I thought that the way that we gridded the town this year and did away with urban and rural boundaries, I thought that was a great step forward. Gives us a lot more leeway in what our judgment is going to be, and can stick more or less to where the egg masses are without defining urban and rural boundaries. I guess my question back to the Director of Public Works, if this council chooses to go the $1 million, is there, and if we put that decision off till March the 2nd, is there a problem with getting the quantity of the material that we're going to need if we go that route?
Through you, Mr. Mayor, staff have contacted the suppliers of this particular agent. In the event that council decides to do a spray program in the order of $1 million, we have received some confirmation that yes, that material would be available to us.
Okay, thank you. That's all for now. Councillor Hahn?
Through you, Mr. Mayor, to Director Marr. So earlier I asked about consulting with other municipalities to find out what they've done, and you said we are kind of a first of our kind. There's no other municipality out there that has a policy as such for the moth. So that being said, have we reached out to the region, to the Conservation Authority, to Ministry of Environment, or our MAFRA to find out whether or not there's any opportunity for a grant or some sort of financial assistance?
Through you, Mr. Mayor, I have reached out to our ministry advisor, and she has given me a contact name for me to call. And so I just got that today, and I'm going to follow up with that because that was my exact question. You know, we're in a crisis here as far as a municipality of an operating budget of $20 million, and now we have an additional $1 million to deal with our gypsy moss and to save our tree canopy, which is critical to this municipality. So I am following up on that.
Thank you, because the way I feel right now is until we know a little bit more on that end, I'm not prepared to make a decision.
Councillor Trophy.
Yeah, through you, Mr. Mayor. Just correct me if I'm wrong. It looks to me that we're going to be spraying 33 hectares of town property and 90 hectares of private property. Is that correct? For a total of 123 hectares for the $1,040,000?
Through you, Mr. Mayor, no, that's not the case. The total area that was identified as having severe infestations, and our consultant used a threshold of 2,500 egg masses per hectare. That represented 1,200 hectares across the town in both urban and rural areas. With respect to the 30 some odd hectares of public land and 90 hectares of private is what we believe we could spray with our current approved budget of $150,000, less the administration and program fees. The 33 hectares were areas that are sensitive to the town with respect to our public parks that were identified during the infestation survey of having severe infestations.
Thank you.
Councilor Stewart?
Through you, Mr. Mayor. Can somebody give me an idea of how many hectares Pelham covers? Because I feel like even if we spend $1 million on it, the cost will be spread among all the taxpayers, and a lot of them aren't going to benefit from it. And I can push my button.
Through you, Mr. Mayor, the town of Pelham covers 125 square kilometers. And I'm being embarrassed right now as Director of Public Works and a civil engineer. I'm doing a calculation to get the conversion into hectares. 12,500 hectares. Multiplication of 10.
Through you, Mr. Mayor. So that estimate of $1,040,000, and if we did 1,200 hectares, that's going to be approximately $350 per acre. Last year, we were over the $600 per acre. I'm just wondering, is that number going to be closer, or when we come back, it might be well over $1 million as well? Basically, my question is did we get that number from our consultants, or at the cost of $1,040,000?
Through you, Mr. Mayor. So how we determined our estimates for the options, we discussed the options with Zimmer Air, who are the applicators for the agent. Based on the infestation survey, there was 1,200 hectares of land that was identified as severely infested. About half of that was within the urban area, and half of that was in the rural area. If you can recall, the areas that were sprayed within the urban area are about $650 per acre, and in the rural areas, they were down as closer to $150 per acre. So it's an average 50-50 to come up with the $350 per acre. But we did contact Zimmer Air Services, and they said as an estimate to use $880 per hectare for a spray within the town limits. And that's what we've used to determine the estimates.
Thank you.
Through you, Mr. Mayor, to the director, how many trees would we lose if we're not aggressive with this program?
Through you, Mr. Mayor, I wouldn't be able to comment specifically on that. That would be a good question at our March 2nd meeting with our consultant Bioforest, and I'm not sure if they would actually be able to answer that question specifically. One thing we do know, and based on the report that we received from our consultant, is that trees normally can withstand 2 to 3 years of heavily infestation, particularly in the rural areas and the wooded lots. Those trees are more resilient. They seem to do better. Trees within the urban area that are subject to other stresses such as road salts and the urban environment, those trees and those tree canopies would be more susceptible to damage during severe infestations.
Through you, Mr. Mayor, how much would one of those trees, if we're responsible for dead trees, how much would it cost us to take one tree down on an average?
Through you, Mr. Mayor, depending on the actual size of the tree, that cost could range anywhere from $1,200 to $2,500 per tree.
So we have a choice, either spray or cut the trees down, or dead trees.
Yes, through you, Mr. Mayor. The infestations, again, they're cyclical. So there are times where there are times when trees are more heavily infested. Treating with spray is considered the most effective operation and the effective method of controlling the infestations and be able to prevent tree mortality. But yes, in the event that treatments are not made, especially within the urban area, there would be the likelihood of losing trees, and those would have to be removed by town staff or contractors.
Through you, Mr. Mayor, one more question. How much would it cost a resident to do it privately by themselves if they end up hiring a private person or they do it themselves? How much would that cost?
To you, Mr. Mayor. So as part of this policy as well, there will be an education piece, and we will be working with staff, working with the residents on what can be done and what preventative measures can be done. There are different things you can do. If you were going to specifically spray individual trees on your property and hire a contractor to come in and do that from the ground, you're looking at anywhere between $150 to $250 per tree. So that is kind of the going rate. There are also some other alternatives out there that you can do. You can do tree banding. There are actually injections that you can make into the tree to help prevent the gypsy moth infestation. So we'll be working with our consultant and getting the information out to the public with respect to different preventative measures that the public can do to help save their trees.
Thank you. Any other questions? Councilor Trophy.
Yeah, through you, Mr. Mayor. Will the consultant be available for questions on March 2nd, at the March 2nd meeting? Is there plans to have them here?
Through you, Mr. Mayor, yes. So we have received a delegation request for March 2nd. So Bioforest, a representative, will be here. The actual person that did the infestation survey and was out in the field doing the work. That individual prepared the report, authored the report, and they are presenting on March 2nd. So you'll have an opportunity to ask them questions at that meeting.
Councilor Hildebrand.
Through you, Mr. Mayor, there's one other consideration that some of the residents contact me on, and that's people with severe allergies. I know we say this is organic, it doesn't cause anybody any problems, but I'm telling you, these people couldn't be convinced. There was no convincing these people. And they definitely are not in favor of having any spray near their property. Obviously, the people I represent are the people in Ward 3, and they're all in a very urban area. So these people didn't appreciate the approach the town took.
Through you, Mr. Mayor. That's probably a good question for our consultant. To discuss the effects of the BTK agent. One thing I do know and I've read is that people do develop an allergy to the actual gypsy moth, to the hairs on the caterpillars, and that will, if there's a heavy infestation, that will affect the respiratory with areas around heavily infested areas.
So the comment that I would like to make is my old age. I forgot it. No, I guess I don't think this council is ready to make the decision tonight until we go March 2nd. So the question is, can you continue? Is there anything we can do to continue going forward until I get, perhaps that's a silly question, because until you know exactly what we're doing, I suppose staff is at a stalemate.
Through you, Mr. Mayor. As it stands right now, we've received the final report from Bioforest. We know what the level of infestation is. We were surprised by the fact of the level infestation that we've had throughout the town. So at this point in time, we're still in good standing. We do have some time, but we need to be diligent. We do need some direction by council with how we are going to proceed with a spray program. There will be a report that is in front of council on March 2nd, which will consider the options of extending the original assignment for Bioforest to include the development of a spray program and to help town staff administer a spray program. That will be presented on the 2nd. That will allow us to keep moving forward with a 2020 spray program. So between now and March 2nd, there isn't much further work to do, but we do need some direction from council with respect to the extent of the program that we're going to undertake in 2020.
And we can do that on March 2nd. Oh, yeah.
Through Mr. Mayor, yes. Yeah, that'll give us sufficient time to move forward with the developing a spray program, have the public consultation. One thing we do want to make clear is that last year staff conducted a spray program, and there was also many other residents that had private spraying done. With the town, we're able to get permits, and we will be presenting a bylaw to council, which will allow staff to go ahead and administer a spray program without getting the written consent from adjacent property owners. People that wish to undertake a spray program that aren't part of the town's program, there's more legwork on their part to get approvals in place from the ministry and to be able to get a successful program off. So our intent is to get in front of council once we have direction on how we're proceeding and what the funding is going to be for the program. Then we'll work with our consultant to develop a spray program, get that in front of council. You will be advised as to what staff intends to do for a spray program with respect to the spray blocks and get your endorsement on that and then move forward with a program. But we want to make sure we get that in front of council early enough so that if there are property owners in the public that are not going to be part of the spray program, they have the opportunity to do something on their own and have time to do that.
Excellent. I remember from that public meeting we had last fall that Zimmer Air said that there's no way that they would participate in what we had set up last year. That they want to come in here and do big blocks. They don't want to be starting to go up and down streets. Is that okay? Correct?
Through you, Mr. Mayor, I believe the contractors will do whatever we ask them to do, but it'll be reflected in pricing. So I think that the intent is if we're able to develop spray blocks that are efficient, then we will, as a town, benefit from reduced pricing based on the development of the spray zone blocks.
Great, thank you. I wonder that either way, whatever council decides on March 2nd, we're going to have to roll out a public information program. I wonder if we should be, is it premature to do that, getting it in place now? And maybe I'm wrong. I don't know. It just seems like I hate to do everything in May and then I don't know. So answer, what's your feeling on that? Can we get the ball out there and say, listen, this is going to be a massive program, or do we have to wait until we see where we're going? I guess I probably answered my own question.
To you, Mr. Mayor. So staff already is working on education piece, and we're looking at getting that information out to the public. Discussions were had around getting it out for the home show, having it part of our community guide, to get some FAQs out there so that the residents are aware of the issue and can react and respond accordingly. So as we move forward with the spray program as well, we will have public open houses that allow the public to come in and we can kind of show the public what we're doing, where we're spraying, what to expect, and what they can do as well to help mitigate the negative impacts of the gypsy moth.
Okay, thank you. Any other questions? Councillor Hahn.
Through you, Mr. Mayor, not so much a question, just a statement, and further to what you were mentioning earlier. I think that it's not even too late now or too early now. I think that we should actually put something on our website right now, because I'm already starting to get questions in regards to where we're at with gypsy moth, just to let people know that aren't actually going onto our website and looking through this information, just to let them know that the discussion has started.
Thank you. Any other comments? Not seen any. Let me confer with the...
So the motion is to receive the report and that a reserve fund be established and the necessary bylaw be prepared for that reserve fund and that the policy be approved. There has been no direction given with regard to the extent of the program.
Okay. Sorry. So as our clerk says, we pass this motion, and then March the 2nd, when we have the bioforest representative here to ask questions to, council will probably be more comfortable at that time to go ahead. So this motion, the Committee of the Whole receive report number 2020-0017, Town of Pelham Gypsy Moth Policy, and the 2020 Gypsy Moth Management Options, and that a Forest Health Reserve Fund be established and the necessary bylaw be prepared, and that Committee of the Whole recommend that Council approve the Public Works Gypsy Moth Management Policy S801-14, which would, of course, be open for discussion on March the 2nd. All those in favor of this report, all those in favor of this motion? No.
Sorry, when you're talking about that policy, or I mean the reserve, is there a set number that we're looking at per year, or?
Mr. CEO?
Yeah, so through you, Mr. Mayor.
I'm sorry.
Oh, I'm sorry, did you want to answer that? So right now, it's just to establish a specific reserve fund for the gypsy moth. So let's just say this year we have $150,000 in the 2020 budget and we only spent 100, then that 50 would go automatically into that reserve. So it's just to have a place to put money in. And so if every year we allocate funds to the gypsy moth, let's just say we keep 150 every year, and we have 4 years in a row that we don't need it, it goes to the reserve. And the reason why we want a reserve fund, because with a reserve fund, you actually have to have the cash. So we want to make sure that if it's $150,000 in the reserve fund, there's $150,000 of cash for that, for the gypsy moth.
Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you for that clarification. Like I said, I didn't call the vote. Did I call the vote? Okay. So I'll call the vote again. All those in favor of this motion as it reads, all those in favor? Okay. All those opposed? Excellent. We will look forward to this on March the 2nd. What do we got? Clerk. So we have our motion put forward by Councillor Stewart that the correspondence received from Niagara Region, Catherine Hammermill, Director of Waste Management Services, dated December 10th, 2019, regarding the confirmation of Pelham's enhanced and optional enhanced services for Niagara Region's new waste management collection contract be received, and that committee receive and approve report number 2020-0018, and that committee recommends for council to endorse the proposed recommendations from town staff regarding the Town of Pelham's enhanced and optional enhanced waste collection services for the Niagara Region's new waste management collection contract. And that Niagara Region be advised that the Town of Pelham requests to continue with its current enhanced services as follows. 1, 2 days per week for public space litter bin and public space recycling bin collection inside designated business areas, DBAs known as, and 1 day per week for public space litter bin and public space recycling bin collection outside the DBAs at an annual estimated cost of $18,825.60, including that GST. Containerized garbage collection at multi-residential buildings and municipal facilities, at an annual estimated cost of $14,195.52, including net HST, and that Niagara Region be advised that the town of Pelham will require the optional enhanced services of number 3, in-ground collection at municipal facilities, i.e. Town Hall, the Meridian Community Center, and Centennial Park, at an estimated cost of $122 per receptacle stop for crane collection. And that Niagara Region be advised that the town of Pelham is not interested in the optional enhanced service of bulky goods collection at MR buildings with 7 or more units and mixed-use properties with 1 or more residential unit at an annual estimated cost of $41,009.28, including HST. Comments and questions on this report? Yep. Councilor Hildebrand.
Through you, Mr. Mayor, I'm going to make a motion that this report be referred back to staff and that staff report back to council on the following item. Number 1, explore other options for providing litter bin collection, including other municipality best practices regarding the placement and necessity of residential bins. Review actual recyclability of products, making necessary process changes, including detailed firm bids for in-ground services, and obtain firm quotes on containerized garbage collection.
Thank you.
Any comments on Councilor Hildebrand's? Councilor Hildebrand.
Definitely, I have a lot of comments. As you probably heard, I was an engineer, and my corporation engineered waste energy operations. I've got many plants with my engineering numbers are on. One of the closest ones is the Niagara Falls, New York one. It's called waste to energy. I know there's a lot of political issues with regards to waste to energy, and there's only one municipality that has adopted what I would recommend, and that's Durham, York. But anyway, Durham, York has a similar plant to what I engineered in Niagara Falls, New York. That plant eats 2,250 tons of waste per day. It produces electrical power, it produces steam, which is sold also locally. The metal that comes out of it is recycled, and the refuge or whatever else comes out is clear landfill. And that's exactly what Durham, York is doing with their garbage. Now I want to go on to where we stand with regards to garbage and recycling in general. In 2016, Bill 151 was established. It was an act to enable the Resource Recovery and Circular Economy Act of 2016 and the Waste Diversion Transition Act to repeal the Waste Diversion Act of 2002. This bill makes producers responsible for recycling costs of the waste they create. It has already come into effect in 2019, and by 2023 and 25, the Blue Box program will be replaced. Be replaced with what? We don't know. Each municipality, that's the region, has to notify the government or the government will select a date when it comes into effect in the municipality. At the operational level, where I'm a member, with 4 other regional operational managers, 5 community experts that have been enlisted through ads in the paper and people from the community applying, and 4 municipalities, the politicians, of which I'm one, I can tell you this committee does not fully understand the complexity of this legislation, nor how producers are going to change the face of recycling as we know it, and the operations at the regional and municipal level. These managers of the region don't know what's going to happen, because obviously we got problems. There's challenges. Since China and other nations in the Far East have refused this type of product, the acceptance rate has become far more stringent. I can tell you the city of Hamilton had warehouses full of cardboard that all of a sudden they thought they were going to recycle, and you know where they ended up? In the dump. Because if they're wet, if they're contaminated, you know where it goes? To the dump. We can all sit here and think we're doing such a great recycling, and even at my house, my wife is a super recycler, but I can tell you, most of the stuff that we're putting in the bins is not going where we think it should go. For cardboard products to be accepted by the purchaser, inspectors have rejected for one straw or one bottle cap of foreign object the bale. And you know what happens to that bale? It goes to the dump. And the general public does not know these facts. The basic contamination rate goal right now is 3%. Previous to that, we were trying to make 5 to 6%. This is done by machines and humans. It's very difficult. They're not sure how they're even going to get near this target. Our next meeting is going to be at the recycling plants to try and determine what exactly has happened. So just because the producers are calling this stuff recyclable doesn't mean it has a home. Most of the stuff ends up in the landfill anyway. The landfill is, we're wondering right now, even whether you got a box with tape on it, you know, all the tape, labels and all this kind of stuff, where exactly is that going? These types of questions we're asking and we're trying to get answers to, because I was talking to them as of this last Friday. The problem is we can spend a lot of money thinking we're doing the right thing, and it all ends up in the end at a place where it all accumulates. I don't know if you've ever been to some of these places, but I know Canada Waste has a big site off Cushman Road, and I can tell you what happens to the trucks that come in. They all get put in one big bin, and I suspect they're going over to Niagara Falls, New York. I haven't followed the trucks. I can tell you where our trucks are going. Our garbage trucks, which have the green bin and the garbage in it, are going to Walker's Quarries. How it's handled there, I can't tell you for sure because I've not followed them through. But that's part of our committee's thing that we're doing. Now let's go on to what the region has chosen. The region has chosen 2 contractors, GFL and the other one is Miller. Both of them are basically Toronto firms. The members of this committee that I'm on have not seen or read the new proposed contracts, nor have these contractors have they been visited or seen from their prospect how they're actually handling the stuff that goes in. The paperwork will all tell you what they're doing. They're all perfect, as any guy given a proposal would place in a proposal to meet the regional requirements. Let's talk about the facts that what the region has agreed to. The region has agreed to a base rate increase of 11.5% for waste. That's 11.5%. Plus an additional price index increase for diesel fuel and the consumer price index. I can tell you this for a fact, that few companies have the equipment to handle a Moloch in-ground garbage collection system. The members of the committee have not seen the new contract, nor know which contract will be providing the enhanced services as requested by this town. Niagara Falls, I don't know if you've heard, is trying to get out of the contract with the region right now. They want to handle their own waste. The basis for their complaint is, over the next 3 years, the cost of handling waste coming to the Niagara Falls community is 35%. That's 35%, and they're telling the region they're getting half the service for 35% price increase. So there's other communities as well that I'm being told are questioning. They haven't come to the table yet, and I'm not sure. The region sits at the regional table, and our director sits with the regional directors. We don't sit at that level. We sit at the operational level. I know that Niagara-on-the-Lake, Waynfleet, West Lincoln have questioned these costs as well. I'm not sure what's happening at the mayoral level or at the director level. That's another level. I'm not prepared to go ahead and have our contract for hauling garbage go up by 35% over the next 3 years and have extra services provided by the region, when I think we should take another serious look with my motions to see what we're going to do. Because I don't think that's what the residents would expect me to do. Thank you.
So, Councillor, I'll play a little bit of devil's advocate here, if I may.
Sure.
So, I've been to the facility in Durham region, and you're right, it's a great facility. Tons and tons go in there, but unless they've changed since I was there in 2016, they don't take outside garbage. Or am I right, or am I wrong on that?
They only accept garbage, as far as we know, from Durham and York, period.
Yes. So that option really isn't part of the
No,
Niagara.
that was a municipality decision by those municipalities. That's how they were going to handle their waste.
Yeah.
That's unusual for Ontario. They're the only municipality in Ontario that decided to do so.
Yeah.
From a political standpoint, from my background, trying to compete with the political pull of some of the big players that have big holes in the ground, corporations don't want to go into that market.
Okay. So I do know that the Niagara region and Hamilton did look at an incinerator probably about 10 years ago. And the truth of the matter is we don't generate enough garbage to be economically feasible in that realm. So it has been looked at, but we would have to bring garbage from other regions. And of course, if anyone's here for any length of time, we can remember when they were going to build an incinerator in St. Anne's, and that was a whole different ballgame. So I appreciate the motion, sir. I really don't know what the options are for this town. I mean, surely you're not suggesting we go out and buy trucks. You just want to see if there's other providers out there. Is that correct?
I want to go out for price extras. What I want to do is take a close look at what our garbage really consists of, because I suspect a lot of the stuff at the MCC really, we're gonna now suggest that we pick up three or four different times, and every time we're going to pick up with a different truck for a different product. But I'm not so sure that the product that we're picking up really is recyclable in the end. Now, the problem I see is I'm not sure whether the staff has enough time to do this kind of work. And if that's the issue, I would suggest that the U.S. committee have an expansion of their committee, and we see whether we have residential experts that would like to help us on this committee. Because I know the region went out to help our committee, and we've got 5 experts. And these guys are really enthusiastic about garbage. It's hard to imagine, but it's like the cannabis group. You guys are amazing, and these guys have the same passion for garbage and recycling. They're an amazing group. I'm telling you.
So thank you for that, Councillor Hildebrand. So I'll go back to the Director of Public Works. The contract, I believe, I know with the 2 suppliers, doesn't start till October, give or take, October 11th, whatever it is. So I guess I'll let you, your feelings on this motion, is it going to affect our ultimate goal with the region? Or do we have a timeline on this that we have to get back to them, or do we have some leeway on this?
Through you, Mr. Mayor, the region was requesting a response back from the municipalities by February. Actually, they wanted January. We told them that we weren't able to get a report in front of council until February. And so at this point in time, I do believe there are still other municipalities in the region that haven't responded back to the region yet. As Councillor Hildebrand had mentioned, There is a concern with respect to one of the municipalities opting out and not being part of the region's waste collection contract. I've been told that there's a report regional staff will be presenting to regional council on March 11th. That will lay out what the impacts would be if Niagara Falls does in fact decide to separate themselves and not be part of the region waste contract. So that could affect the pricing that the other municipalities receive. With respect to looking at options for litter bin collection, we have not gone out just specifically dealing with the enhanced services now. For the litter bin collection, we have not gone out and tried to solicit pricing from other private companies. One of the advantages that you get when you have the region contractor doing it is that they're driving down the road. So they don't service all of our litter bins, but they'll service the litter bins that are on the route. So they're already there, they're picking up garbage, and they charge us extra to pick up our litter bins that are located along the routes that they carry already. We looked at doing that work in-house. We do not have the staff resources or abilities to be able to do that. And in fact, based on our estimations, in order for us to do that, we would probably need an additional 2 staff and a truck, a 1-ton truck, which the region does it for roughly a quarter of the cost of what we could do it for in-house. But again, we have not gone out to another provider to see if there's other options available to us on the litter bin side of things or the containerized garbage side of things. We did look into additional pricing for the pickup of the recycling and the garbage with the in-ground units, the Molochs. There are, correct, Councillor Hildebrand was correct in the fact that there are only a limited number of companies that are able to provide that service with the equipment. One of the other companies that we looked at getting pricing from, they were in right now. So right now, our current service provider is providing the service for just over $16,000, and that's to service the MCC, the Town Hall, and Centennial Park Molochs. The region contract, we're expecting that to be somewhere between $25,000 and $30,000 through their quoted prices. We have some reassurance from the region that they will, in fact, pick up the different recycling streams and the garbage separately. So we can only assume that they would be recycled properly. The other quote we got was in the order of $50,000 from another company to provide the same service that we're receiving now. So we have looked into some pricing on that. Staff were more than happy to bring a report back with respect to a more detailed analysis on respect to those different options available to us. But my initial reaction would be that we would be getting the best bang for the buck with using the region contractor.
Councillor Hildebrand?
I'd just like to make a comment regarding litter bins. I'm not against litter bins, but I live near a litter bin. And unfortunately, what I see happening at this litter bin is the residents use that as an overflow for their garbage container. And that's not what it's designed for. It's right by a park. I'm not sure what the philosophy is in having litter bins, what the philosophy the town had when they established litter bins by the parks. Because people go there with their kids to play. In my area, that's where they're not putting the garbage in. The people that are putting the garbage in are the people that are all over the community walking down or driving down. They see a bin, they open it up and chuck it full. That's what's happening to the litter bins in my area. So I'm not sure what we have is what the philosophy was behind the placement of the bins and why we have those bins.
Trophy.
Yeah, through you, Mr. Mayor. If we go ahead with Councillor Hildebrand's motion, what are our options? And do we defer this to a couple weeks till you get more pricing, or like I don't understand it. I see that there really isn't no option. You've already done the investigation, and the region is the cheapest.
Through you, Mr. Mayor. Like I said, we have not gone through an extensive process of receiving additional pricing for servicing our litter bins, our containerized garbage collection. We have done some more research into the in-ground Molochs, the pickup and disposal of that. material. Staff can definitely come back with a more detailed report, which will identify some of those costs. The region did want us, the councilor is correct in saying, or the mayor, sorry, the new contract comes into place in October of 2020. So the region is basically looking to get some assurances from the municipalities on their buy-in on moving forward with respect to the general waste collection contract, and then which additional services we want to provide. That being said, there are some issues still outstanding with the region with respect to one of the municipalities wanting to divulge themselves from the region contract, and they're taking a report on March 11th, which will kind of lay out what the impacts would be to other municipalities based on that particular municipality opting out of the region contract. So although the region is looking for us to get an answer back as soon as possible, I think it would be fair to say that we could come back with a report with some additional look at some of the litter bin collection, containerized bin collection, and the in-ground mullock removal and disposal, and also wait to see what type of impact it would have if Niagara Falls decides to separate themselves from the region in their contract.
Through you, Mr. Mayor, to the director. All the garbage goes to regional sites, right? Garbage goes to regional dumps.
Through you, Mr. Mayor, I'm not sure exactly where they dispose. I do believe they do use the regional sites.
And there's a charge to that.
There is an additional charge for disposal of based on with the enhanced services. Yes, correct. It's
So
about
if we went to a
$10,000
second party, yes, it'd be cheaper then the region will just tax us on the other side. They'll bring garbage to their sites.
Yeah, through you, Mr. Mayor, I'm not sure exactly what the details are, but I would be more than happy to find that out and include that as part of that report.
I can tell you where all the garbage goes. It goes to Walker's Quarries. That's where the garbage goes. This recycling products, if they're quality recycling products, that's the key. And that's what's so very stringent. The problem is selling those and having a market. And the buyers are not the same buyers as they used to be. So it isn't a matter that, like our contractor who's handling the Moloch system right now, he's going to the Walker dump too, just like the region's going.
Yeah, through you, Mr. Mayor, then I think I would support Councillor Hildebrand's motion at this time, and then at least it'll give us staff time to come back with some additional pricing, and to also see if that other municipality will elect not to be part of the waste management collection system through the region, and see what that pricing would be, and then we can compare. I think waiting until March 11th won't hurt nothing.
Thank you, Councillor. Any more questions on this? If not, I will call the motion on the, I will call the vote on the motion. On the amendment, I'm sorry.
On the motion to refer.
Yeah, on the motion, on the councillor's motion, right? Yeah, okay. So this is the motion brought forward by Councillor Hildebrand, that the report be referred back to staff, and that staff report back to council on the following item. Explores other options for providing litter bin collection, including other municipality best practices regarding the placement necessity of residential bins. Reviews actual recyclability of products, making necessary process changes, including detailed firm bids for in-ground services, and obtains detailed firm quotes on containerized garbage collection. Any further debate on this? Not seeing any, call the vote. All those in favor on this amendment? Any opposed? The amendment carries.
So motion to refer is a main motion, so that just replaces this motion.
Okay.
It's referred back to staff. Yeah.
Okay. Motion put forward by Councillor Stewart that committee receive report number 2020-0015 and recommend to council that council approve the revised Summerfest terms of reference. comment and questions on this report? Councilor Chofie.
Yeah, I think it's important to have a good, strong committee there for Summerfest, and if we need to replace the two people, I think it's very important that it gets done.
Thank you. Any other comments? If not, I'll call the vote. All those in favor? All those opposed? Motion carries. Motion put forward by Councilor Corr, that this regular meeting of regular meeting of committee be adjourned until the next regular meeting scheduled for March 2nd, 2020, following council. All those in favor? All those opposed? This meeting is adjourned. Thank you for all the residents that saw it to the